Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, we're going to give you 5 tips for doing public speaking with confidence, especially if you are introverted. And to do this, I have a special guest, Shelly from the YouTube channel, Shelly Saves the Day. Say hi, Shelly.
Hey everyone.
Shelly does live streaming from her channel. You can check it out. I will put a link to her channel in the description below this. And I have invited her on to talk about public speaking today because about a month ago, I saw her do a fantastic presentation. And I thought, since she has admitted to me that she's an extreme introvert and I'm an extrovert, I thought we could bring on a genuine introvert for you, viewers, so you can get her perspective. She used to work at Amazon, Google, and she now works at TubeBuddy, which if you're in the YouTube world, you probably know what that is. It's a company that YouTubers use the app a lot for their channels. And I was wondering, before we get into the meat of it, Shelly, if you could just tell us, in your professional journey in those different positions, what does your public speaking journey look like to lead you to where you are right now?
It's so interesting because as an introvert, sometimes one of the things I don't want to do is have to talk to a lot of people or do a lot of public speaking. And yet in every single position I've been in a graduated type of experience, having to talk to more people and on larger stages. It's a little terrifying, frankly. But when I was at Amazon, I would speak at a Women in Tech conference as a speaker about my experiences. And I remember looking down into the audience and seeing our VP of our org as I'm berating them about what an experience it is for women in technology and in our particular org. So that's terrifying. And then when I went on to Google and I would go on and have to do public speaking, I was running meetings for our executive level people. And I was like lowest person on the totem pole being like, what am I doing here? Why am I telling them what to do and what not do? And then, now that I work for TubeBuddy, it's so interesting because now I go to conferences and I speak on stages about how to do more things or how to be, on public facing stages. And it's terrifying. And it's like all of these milestones graduated stages. And I'm like, why am I doing this? But they keep asking me to do it. And I keep saying yes.
Yeah, well, you're a great public speaker. I saw you do that presentation and it was really impressive. And it doesn't surprise me that they continue to push you out there. But it's funny that your journey is not unlike many people's journey. They go to school for whatever and they get into a career for something, maybe technical, and they don't think they're going to be doing public speaking. And that's probably why they didn't go into it in the first place. But you show a little competence and they say, hey, why don't you get up there and explain it at our next meeting, Shelly? And then there you go. Your journey just began. And here you are now, in some ways, almost like a professional speaker. You are out there at conferences in front of big audiences, speaking professionally, representing your company. I'm sure if someone had asked you,
it's heart palpitations to even hear you say that. Technically, yes, but I'm like, oh no.
And a lot of people watching are going to be in that situation before they know it. You're going to do a good job at something, and someone's going to say, "Go explain that to the whole team." And there you go. You're off and running.
Nailed it right there when you said competence. Apparently, is confidence to other people, and so they take someone who knows something about whatever it is that they want to know about, and then says, oh, you seem to know about it. Go tell everyone. And then you're like, but, and they're not looking for that. They're just like, just tell us what you know.
So as an extreme introvert, which you have admitted to be, what overall big picture piece of advice would you give introverts who either want to do public speaking or, like you, were expected to do it?
I was going to say, I don't know if any of us want to do it. We get forced or asked or voluntold to do it. And it's a whole other story. We don't really always get to say no to that. But here's the thing is, I would say it's never going to be worse than it is in your own head. And technically, you're not going to get up there, have a heart attack and fall over and die. That's never usually going to be the case. It's usually going to be, I remember my biggest fear was saying, is someone going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to? And am I going to look and feel dumb and unprepared? And that's the worst case scenario in my mind. Right. And so that's where you think you build it all up in your head. And so I would say it's never any worse in person than it is in your own head. Yeah. And so the biggest thing you have to get over is changing your mindset around it.
Oh, that's so powerful. I think so much of it, at least 50% of people's public speaking problems are basically in their own head, and nobody ever even knows that it's a problem for them.
Yeah.
So I have 5 things I noticed about your presentation the other day in Albany. And I was wondering if we could turn these into talking points for tips for our viewers. So I'll give an overview here and then we'll dig down for about a minute on each. I noticed that you were authentic. You had great engagement with the audience. You delivered value in your message. You kept it conversational and you were very persuasive without feeling like you were giving us a sales pitch. So let's start with the first one. I thought you came across as very authentic. What
Thank
is
you
your
so much.
mindset going?
I
You're
appreciate
welcome. What's your mindset going in? What advice would you give to people about authenticity?
Authenticity is a lot less exhausting than always having to put on a character. You don't have to remember, like, am I like sassy? Am I funny? Am I whatever? Like, you can be what you are and you can just be that. And it's enough. And so I think a lot of people go on and they have a completely different thing that happens to them. And then they get nervous because then if anyone also asks a question afterwards or comes up to you, it's like, do I have to be that person or do I have to be this person? And
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
just yourself, it's always the same. So it's actually calming to know that, like, no matter what version you're going to get of you, it's true and authentic. So I would say do that. Because, you know, a lot of people will be like, fake it till you make it. And be like, or you can just be scared and terrified that you're not that person. So just be yourself. I know it's like
Right.
mom advice, but like, just be yourself.
No, it's so powerful because it's one less thing to think about, right? If I don't have to be a character, I don't have to pretend, I can just focus on who I am. And then you can get down to the real work of delivering your message. So I also noticed you had excellent engagement, meaning you got us as the audience involved. How did you decide to do that? And I remember an example, you probably remember the example I'm thinking of about how you got us all fired up in there. But how did you make that decision to get us involved rather than just talking at us?
So some of it's kind of selfish in a way, because as an introvert, I didn't want to fill the time with just myself talking. So it's really, really easy to almost involve people and then be like, hey, what do you think? And then just for that 30 seconds, I could hear the room talking about like, oh, I'd pick this one or this one's better. And I don't have to say anything. I can agree. I can just nod. I can be like, uh-huh. I can, you know, I already know in my head how it's going to play out. So I kind of can, you know, chuckle to myself that everyone has already guessed wrong. And so that's a really interesting position because like nothing is needed of you of that particular moment. And you can just be like, hey, what do you think? And having that little piece of conversation, right? And like everyone is going to have an opinion. So your example was I put 2 pictures up of 2 different thumbnails on the screen and I would ask people, one of these performed a lot better than the other one. Which one do you think it is? And you leave it open and someone would be like, this one. And then it'd be like, okay, well, everyone raise your hand if you think it's this one or that one. And as you start to build that participation, it's like, oh, wow, they're listening to me. They're interacting with me. They're engaging with me. And wow, look at this. We're forming a relationship. They're not so scary. They're not going to kill me. Right. All of that is going through your head. And so you feel more comfortable because it's just easy.
Yeah, that's great. I do that in the classroom as a teacher. Of course, I'm always trying to get hands-on instead of just lecturing. But your example was fantastic. You used images that engages people. You asked us really clear questions. Which one do you think is better? And then you had us guessing, you know, talking about it amongst ourselves and voting. I think you even had us raise our hands, right? That's engagement. And then, of course, you revealed in most cases that a lot of us were wrong. And that was kind of like, wow, you know, that was fascinating to us how we could be so wrong since we sort of do this professionally.
I love being in like the know, like, you know, what's going to happen. And that little tickle of like, oh, they all got it wrong. Just wait.
You had the answers ahead of time. You're also delivering value. That next point, you did a great job and kept our attention because you were giving us something that we needed. And I think we talk about this in video. We say, you gotta, if people are clicking and watching a video, they're investing their time. So you better give them some value, give them something that they need. But we don't talk enough about that in the public speaking world. We just say, you know, do a good job, try to analyze your audience and tailor your message to them. But we don't talk about delivering value. But you did in your presentation. You gave us something we needed. So can you talk a little bit about your mindset and crafting that message so it helped us?
Yeah. So one thing that I sometimes think about is going to be, you know, that they're never going to remember the words, but they'll remember what you said or that feeling that you get.
Mm.
So they may not remember everything that I talked about, but they remember they had a good time, they laughed, they learned. It was like something stood out differently for other people at different times. It was like what they were ready to receive and hear at that point, and it came into their lives when they needed it. And so if you think about that, it also becomes really easy to talk about whatever it is, because you're like, this is not about me. This is not about how nervous I am. This is about, let's see, in this particular context, how can, you know, creators get the most out of this tool or these types of things, or how can we help them? And it becomes the end goal of, I just want to help you guys get better. And when you come from this very authentic wanting to help type of place as well, it becomes really easy to engage and not have it be about you, but have it be about the message and the deliverable, about this is what I want you to walk away from this with. This is what I want you to feel, or how I want you to feel, or like how you're going to feel empowered when you leave this. So that's what I really try and craft, because it's not really about me. It's about that.
Oh, that's so great. So we have this triangle in the field of communication: speaker, audience, message. And what you're doing there in that triangle is you're not really thinking about yourself very much. You're thinking about your audience and your message and how you can connect those two for maximum impact. And I think that puts our ego in the back seat, and it puts the focus where it should be, on our listeners. So that's really great. Next thing you did really well was you were very conversational. It never felt like a lecture or that you were memorizing everything. It never felt stiff or wooden. How do you keep it conversational?
So I think you try and build in some of those moments, you know. So there were some moments where I was kind of vulnerable and I said, this has happened to me in the past. And like, that's a whole other story. And that is very true to my authentic self. I have a very squirrel brain. I usually have Post-its. I will go off on all these side tangents. So I threw in but that's a whole other story for another day type of moment in my speech. And so, because that's how I speak and that's my authentic self saying that. So when I talk about that, and when I ask you, what kind of thing would you do? What kind of thing do you see? That is because I want to know, because I'm really curious, genuinely curious, because it's not always about like what I can force onto you, because it's like, if this isn't a solution that's going to work for you, then I don't need to waste your time listening to or like pushing this on you. And I don't want to push anything. I want to be like, if this isn't beneficial for you, then I want to know that. But you have to know through conversation what it is, like how people react or what they actually want to see from you. And it's actually a lot easier than you think, because you can read body language and you can just kind of hear like, what's the intonation? Like, you could tell that room was very like happy and jovial and like joking with each other. And, you know, or like, that's where I knew it was like safe to kind of yell at you in the audience and like kind of come back at you. And like some rooms you can read it and you know that it's not that type of room. And so I think it's actually, if you are intuitive and kind of introverted, we a lot of the time we're quiet, but we're observant. And so if you're kind of observant in the room, it's really easy to kind of pick up some of those signals and then kind of interweave it and make it easier to be conversational.
Yeah. And you adapt it all along the way. Like you're saying, if people come in with a word for word script, they can't do any of the things you just mentioned, really, because they're stuck. And so you had talking points, you had slides, but you didn't have, I don't remember anything that sounded word for word.
Yeah, I do bullet points. I have a harder time with like scripts, because then I'll focus so much on trying to read the words correctly without stuttering, or, you know, the intonation and inflection then goes. Right. And it doesn't seem very conversational. It seems robotic, like you're reading a script. Yeah,
it sounds like reading. And who wants to hear you read your paper? You know, nobody wants to hear a student in class, for example, read their student paper. They want to just have a conversation. And the fifth point, our last point, is that you were really persuasive. I was persuaded, but you weren't. It never really felt like a sales pitch. It just felt like you believed in the TubeBuddy app and you brought us along. So tell us about your mindset. How are you persuasive without feeling like you're a salesperson?
So such a good question, because I think one of the biggest points is that we don't want to come across as sleazy, salesy, like persuasive too much in the wrong way. And that a lot of the time will stem from, I haven't provided enough value. I haven't shown you enough empirical evidence. I haven't like actually had a relationship with you, because it's really easy if you're talking with your friend to be like, oh, you really need to check this out. Like, it's not a sales pitch. It's a trusted recommendation from a friend. And so I think a lot of the fear and nervousness that comes from feeling salesy and sleazy is either if you don't strongly believe in your product, you know you don't have the rapport and relationship with an audience or a person, and you're trying to shove a solution into what isn't yet a problem for them. So if I come by and I say like, this is the thing, and they're like, but that's not my problem at all. And they're like, yes, but I have this thing. So that's the thing. When I talk about, you said, hey, I've got language translations I'd like to do. And I say, hey, we have this thing that can do that. It's not all of a sudden like someone who never asked and then saying like, hey, you need to do this so you can do the, X, Y, and Z. It was like, oh, this is actual problem that I need and it will do it. It's not a sale at that point. It's just like, oh my gosh, please help me. Where have you been? Why didn't you tell me sooner?
Exactly. So that's what it felt like. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I am and I did. I went right upstairs, got on my laptop, and I ordered the advanced version. I've been using TubeBuddy forever. And for those who don't know, it's an app. That's all you need to know. But YouTubers use it. I've been using it forever, but there was another level. And I was happy to pay that because now one of the extra features is that I can translate all of my subtitles on my videos into numerous languages. And since that conference, all the new videos are being translated into about 12 different languages. So thank you for that, Shelly. You definitely earned your pay that day, but it never felt like a sales pitch. You just were solving my problem. And it was such a natural outcome of a great message, demoing the product and helping me feel like I was excited to do it. And so for viewers, if you're watching, sometimes you're going to speak to inform people. Sometimes you're just training them, for example, a how-to speech, giving them some information. Sometimes you have to persuade them as part of your job. You have to bring people from A to B. You have to convince people to follow you. And that's where persuasive speaking comes in. That's really where you can level up your public speaking and presentation skills. If you can speak persuasively without feeling like you're pitching somebody and pushing them in a direction they don't want to go, that's a really great way to do that. So those are our 5 tips for introverts. Shelly's an introvert, but really all of these tips work for just about anybody. So I really appreciate your time, Shelly. Thanks for being here. And I just want to give your channel a shout out one more time. It's called Shelly Saves the Day. She has weekly live streams. It's really fun. I will put a link to that in the description below the video. Thanks, Shelly. Anything you want to say before we leave?
You can do it. It's a skill. You just have to keep doing it.
Excellent. Thanks so much for being here. See you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye.